My dear fellow listeners and viewers, good evening once again, and welcome to another edition of the Dr. Narine Dat Show. Here on the Dr. Narine Dat Show, we create a safe space for positive energy and mutual respect. This evening, we have a very special guest, just like what we've had in the past on the Dr. Narine Dat Show. It is my honor to introduce to you a good friend of mine, somebody who I've had several times on my previous show. Let's chat with Narine, including the Caribbean Spice Radio show as well too. He was honored at our Caribbean, Dreams concert. We have so much to talk about. So, Dr. Marinus, welcome to the show. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Awesome. So what we're gonna do, we will kind of give you, your space so you can introduce yourself to us, and then once you're done that, we will dive right into it, dive right into things. So take it away.
Okay. Marinus de Groot, that's my name, better known as Martin de Groot, because I think I'm best known for having written the column, arts and culture column in the Record. I did that for 22 years. And I've been active in the community for even longer than that. And by accident ended up getting involved. My background is in history. I'm a legitimate doctor, but my doctorate is in history, American history, U.S. American history, and North American history. But when I started getting involved in civic things, starting with downtown Kitchener, downtown revitalization, the arts and culture things started to draw me in. And I ended up writing an arts and culture column. I ended up being the executive director of the Waterloo Regional Arts Council. And then I worked also for a long time for the Commons Studio, which is originally called the Multicultural Cinema Club. And that was part of the Working Center. And that was a media arts resource center. We had cameras and audio equipment. And it was there as a community service, a community tools project of the Working Center. Now that closed down unexpectedly 5+ years ago with COVID. It was terrible. We went into work one day and they said, "We got to go home. We got to go quarantine because of this virus thing or whatever it was." And so we went home, not realizing that we would never go back. So it was a peculiar way to make a break with what had been your career, right? I mean, I first of all expected to go back, and then gradually sort of it dawned on me that it wasn't going to happen. And it wasn't like making a decision to retire or go on to something else. I'm an old hand. I've been around a long time. I don't like the word senior. I'm old, and I don't mind that at all. It's part of what I am. And it's interesting thinking about people my age and the generations. And some of the programs we did at the Common Studio had to do with, we had funding from New Horizons for seniors. And we always said, we don't want to work with seniors isolated because we're part of the society, right? So our programs were actually seniors working with younger people who are in school or recent graduates on an equal basis. And we did a number of those sort of experiments. You learned by doing, and we tried various combinations. It was very, very experimental. And one of the things that came out of that was this radio show, originally for CKWR. And I first started it as something for people involved in these programs to do, because it was learning by doing. And it was supposed to be a team effort and all of that. But everything changed with that COVID call because suddenly I was at home, isolated. I didn't have contact with younger people. I didn't have contact with other older people. The studio was gone, no more equipment. So now you're there all by yourself at home in your apartment. You're not even allowed to go out because, and so I just kept doing it on my own. But that was never the intention. And even now, I still would really like it. I have thoughts and ambitions about how to turn this into something broader, something more innovative. And I won't describe exactly. It'll take me a long time. I've been thinking about this steadily for 6 years, so I can go on and on for hours talking about that. And it really is a project that related to my work with the record, because I was deeply disturbed over all those years to see our daily newspaper shrink smaller and smaller, fewer and fewer. They don't even have a newsroom anymore. They're no longer present. The television station used to have lots of local programming and lots of production right here in Kitchener. Almost nothing of that left. The radio stations were mostly bought up by conglomerates and running, programs. I think local journalism in the broader sense, the ecosystem that we have at our disposal for getting informed, for getting news, but also for talking like we're doing here now. It's a deliberation process. And I think that's part of, it's not just, for our democracy and our local democracy and all that. It's more fundamental than that. I think we need those kind of things, that kind of ecosystem to have a healthy, vital, vibrant community. And that's, I think, where I hope to be able to make some kind of contribution.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. I am aware that you have lots to share, right? Because you've been about a while and you're very much passionate about what you do. I want to bring you back to the common studio though, because when I was working, in the downtown area, I visited that space and you toured me around and whatnot, and so I can visualize this space and whatnot. So, what were some of the things that you accomplished while the space, was a space, that people, were using and, utilizing in a way that works for them? Like, what are some of the most memorable moments, really, or project that you can share with us?
You're right. I was involved right from the beginning, but at first peripherally, because what was originally called the Multicultural Cinema Club was the brainchild and sort of the baby of Azam Fukalade, who was a filmmaker and media professional from Syria. And he came here from Syria long before the Troubles. And his dream was, Syria has a very sophisticated film and television industry before the Troubles. But he came here and he was working, I think, with RIM, but not, it was an assembly kind of job. And his dream was to set up what he called a cinema club. And it was actually modeled after cinema clubs that they have in Syria, where it did, first of all, it had the tools for making videographic work, cameras, sound equipment, lighting, all of those things, microphones. But it also was there to create a culture of cinema. He had festivals that would have like global films that he would show. Plus, there was also an annual local focus film festival. And I was part of that right from the beginning, because he did that in partnership with the Working Center. And the Working Center came to me at the Arts Council and said, we want to incubate this project. Would the Arts Council like to be involved? And I said, sure, yes, I'd very much like to be involved. And let's go over to the Social Planning Council and ask Trudy Bone if she's interested too. So it became those three organizations, the Social Planning Council, which is now the Center for Social Development in Waterloo Region, and the Arts Council and the Working Center. And about halfway through, there was a bit of a rift. As the founder left, and I volunteered along with Philip Bass, who used to be my editor at the Record, to keep the place going. I went in one day, Philip went in the next, and then the Working Center said, "Hey, why don't you just work here? Why don't you just take charge of this?" And I said, "Well, I'd be really embarrassed if word got out that I'm going to take the place of Azam Fukalade, because I knew I'm not a film professional." But I said, if you hire a film professional, I'll work with him or her because I was more interested in community type programming that was more in line with the kind of things that the working center did. They treated this as a community tools project, and it was all about work and skill and knowledge, and just basically that the community would have access to this knowledge, these skills, and these tools. So that's what we did. So I ended up doing that, running these programs, learning by doing. And in the meantime, we served, first of all the smaller commercial kinds of producers here in the region. There's quite a few. They would rent our equipment because we had top-notch professional equipment. And there were local artistic interests, sometimes just hobbyists, but also sometimes very serious and talented filmmakers. So we nurtured them and supplied them with resources. And then, of course, we did these programs, and that was my baby. I got funding from here and there and ran these programs, learning by doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, my dear fellow listeners and viewers, for those of you who have just tuned in, you're watching and listening to the Dr. Narine Dat Show. We are joined by Dr. Martin. I'll use Dr. Martin. He goes by that name, Martin. I think it'll make it nice and easy for folks. Obviously, for those of you who tune in from the beginning, we introduce him properly, obviously, but he also goes by the name Martin to make it nice and easy. He's here because he has lots to share, and you can learn a thing or two, that's for sure. I want to talk a little bit more about the arts, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about your teaching in Jamaica, because you spent quite a few years there, and that was really good for me to hear, but surprising as well in different ways, especially back in those days. You've really embraced the culture. You've learned, so much. I remember, I believe you shared all of that at the working center in some sort of circle. That could be the democracy in action, or the democracy diploma program that they have, rather, I believe, something like that. So your passion for arts is very interesting in a sense that you do not narrow yourself down to one thing, right? You do a lot of writing. You've done a lot of writing in newspapers. You still do, your radio program, all of these types of things. Are you able to share with us, the pieces that you enjoy the most, and also what get you started in the arts? Because you're very much passionate about this. I've seen you, I've heard you speak at so many different places, and you've always, speak with passion. You have a really good way to put it all together.
Well, like I said, it was kind of accidental because I had been in Jamaica, and this is I'm going to start with the arts thing first, which actually came after my time in Jamaica. And the Jamaica was a call out of the blue. I hadn't finished my doctorate yet, and I was kind of an academic orphan because my advisor had passed away. He was a very distinguished scholar in U.S. in American history. He kind of took me under his wing, and he passed away, and I kind of drifted out of it. I did various things. I was for a while, the plant manager at Woolwich Dairies, the people.
No.
Yeah. A family friend.
Oh, wow.
There was a family business. They kept the goats and goat milk, and they made goat milk products. And I ended up, first I would drive to St. Lawrence Market and sell. In the middle of the night, I had to get up and go to the St. Lawrence Market and sell their products. And then eventually somebody got sick, and I helped out in the plant, and I ended up plant manager. And then out of the blue, I got this call, and my wife said, "Hey, there's somebody on the phone with an English accent." And I almost said, "Oh, tell him I'm not here," because there was this chef that used to call me when he didn't get his But I said, "Okay, I'll answer it." But it turned out to be Professional Michael Creighton, who's a very well-known name in the Caribbean because he's a historian, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to go to Jamaica and teach English for a year, or teach U.S. history for a year?" And I said, "Well, that's an interesting proposition." I said, "Sure, I'll do that," and I went. the year turned into 2 years and then 3 years. And I came this close to actually, I applied for the job that originally I was there to fill just temporarily because it was a person who was on leave, but the person never came back. And I came this close. I heard later that it was between me and another person. It was 50-50, and I didn't get it. So I came back here, and now I was back into the stream of studying history. It changed my perspective entirely. It's like having your whole world turned around. It just broadened because you think North American history, Canada, the United States, but now I was there in the Caribbean. And the second year, they gave me the assignment of teaching Atlantic World, which was their introductory course. Anybody who took anything in the humanities had to take Atlantic World, which is basically the interaction between the four continents, Europe and Africa and North and South America. And I had to work really hard to stay ahead of my students and be able to teach that. But in so doing, my whole perspective changed because these were things that I hadn't imagined. I also wasn't fully aware of how integrated these all were. You tend to sort of think of these things as America or Europe, the center, and everything else peripheral, but it's not that. Those components came together, and what we have, our daily life, came out of all that. So that changed my perspective. I went back. I asked after it had been 10 years since I started my PhD. I said, "Can I still finish?" And they said, "Well, sure, come in." So I wrote my thing, went and did my defense, and everything went well. And then in that time, the city of Kitchener had this thing called Visions 93. It was City Hall had just been built, brand new. And my mother-in-law had been invited because she knew people at City Hall and stuff. She used to complain about stuff, and they just knew her. And I said, "Hey, can I come along? I'll just tag along and see what it's like." And I went. And that's when I had that conversion, right? Because here I was back from Jamaica, almost finished my PhD. And in Jamaica, I was somebody. I was a member of the history department of the University of the West Indies and had all sorts of, connections and friends. But here I was back to nothing again. And so they were at the conference. They talked about the city. They'd built this beautiful new city hall, but downtown was in really bad shape. And those 3 years between 90 and 93, you could see the difference. It was another recession. The 80s had been, the deindustrialization, all the people getting laid off, everything changing. And it hit that part of the city in particular really hard. And you could see it in people's faces that there was something wrong. And it's a large city. It's the 10th largest city in Canada. It's important. It's also intellectually challenging because what happened? Like, why is this happening? And also, what are you going to do about it? That's even more challenging. How are you going to fix these things? So I thought this is important. It's intellectually challenging. I'm just going to get involved. So I started volunteering for things. And I started getting recruited. People, I go around and say, "Hey, you want to be on this, want to be this committee, that committee?" The Heritage Committee was now the Heritage Kitchener, the first one I went to. And then some people from the Catholic high schools wanted to preserve this beautiful Edwardian theater. They were called the Friends of St. Jerome's. I joined that. And Globe Studios, and I was interested in downtown revitalization, but it was clear to me that there was an obvious harmony of interest between all these arts groups, younger people, full of energy. They wanted to do things. They were ambitious. They needed space. They needed presence. Now this downtown, which had lost its original commercial purpose, lots of room, perceptions really damaged. I thought, this is perfect. This is a perfect combination. So that's how I got involved with arts and culture and all of that. Yes.
That's awesome. And so, what is it that you miss the most about this common studio? I mean, I know what it looked like. It was a very nice, welcoming space, and obviously, you really wanted to make sure that the community, have access to tools and the regular stuff to really do any sort of project that is related to um, the equipment that you had there available. What is it that you miss about that the most?
I miss, first of all, having a job.
Hmm.
I like being part of something, and I was
Hmm.
part of something
Hmm.
amazing. The Working Center is an amazingly diverse, dynamic organization, and being part of that meant a lot to me. I learned a lot just by being part of that organization with their diploma in local democracy and their diploma in ecological economics and also their connections to the community and their way of doing things, right? And so I miss that. I miss having a place to go every
Hmm.
day. You open the door and it was that particularly where we were in the end, which was near the Kitchener Market, a storefront operation right on King Street with the door open. People could just come in, and we were a very welcoming
Hmm.
organization. They'd built a beautiful studio downstairs in the basement, painted it all white so you could do green screen and
Hmm.
various kinds of things. Plus, they had a very well appointed cafe that was also part of this. So it
Hmm.
really was an amazing place. Plus, we had before been over on Queen Street above where the Queen Street Commons Cafe was. And the Queen Street Commons Cafe was also an amazing institution because
So hold on,
it,
hold on. I'm not cutting you. What you mean was, you mean that the coffee no longer operates? Is that what you're saying? Because
it's
I'm not
current.
aware now.
It
Sorry, go
hasn't.
ahead.
It closed down its doors at the same time as the
Wow.
Common Studio is, but the difference is it's still possible that it would open up. The
Okay.
Common Studio will never open up. They actually gave all the equipment to Kitchen Library
Okay.
and said, we're going to go out of this. Uh, we can't do this anymore.
Wow.
But I think when I run into Joe Mancini once in a while and he gives me progress reports, it takes often longer than you expect. You have to be patient, city inspectors
Yeah,
and
of
all,
course,
but
of
they're
course.
busy bringing that space up to code, and it will be open again sometime. So
Okay,
it's
and
not gone,
so
but it,
doing like the similar type of thing
yes, I think so. It probably will change in some ways. I don't
in
know.
some
I don't
ways,
know what
yeah,
their
yeah,
plans are. But it was a beautiful space because it was designed to be a place where everyone was supposed to be welcome, including people from the street and working center
yeah, yeah.
clients. And also, though, people who were downtown people, the lawyers and the business people and all of that. And it worked from day one. The mix that was in that space from day to day that we could go in. There's nothing ever like that anywhere because
Yeah,
it was such an interesting combination of people.
yeah.
And it worked. And my job ended up showing a movie there every week. Every Friday night, I would come over from the Common Studio and bring a different film every week and show it in the back of the place. And it became sort of a little club of its own with its
Hmm.
own clientele and a little community in itself. And it was meant, I chose the films, but I tried to give them, it's, there are people there who have nothing, right? They can't afford
Hmm.
cable. They,
Hmm.
they go to the library, but that's it. They can't go to movies. But there's a lot of people in that community who want to be intellectually challenged. So they appreciated solid movies that were that gave you a bit of a challenge. They didn't want to be just entertained. And it was a beautiful thing that I did for like 6, 7, 8 years. So hundreds of films week after week.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was definitely, without any question, a really nice space. I've went there several times, and believe it or not, that's where I had the best vegan burger. I can
right.
openly say, definitely the best vegan burger. I had it there at the cafe there. I can tell you that. And I know it's kind of sounds a little bit weird that I was not aware that they closed down. And I don't want it to look like I'm out of touch based on what's happening Kitchener here because here is where I live, but I work in Toronto, so I'm kind of spending a lot of time there.
Yeah.
But I know everything as what's happening, so I hope you you don't get fooled in any shape or form. You know what I mean? And it's hard to keep up with everything that's happening, right? I mean, you will know more because obviously you were there, you spend a lot of time, and you really enjoy your time there, and you've explained it and shared it so well. The clientele. It's very unique. You could have a lawyer there. You could have like a homeless man. They're all utilizing
Yeah.
the same space, and that's a beautiful thing. Isn't that something, eh?
It's beautiful.
Very, yeah, very welcome thing. So hopefully they get it up and running, and when they do the opening, I will be there.
Great.
Yeah,
I'll
so
be
you will,
there too.
yeah, you'll have to invite me. Somebody will have to invite, but
I'll
once I
make sure
know,
I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
please do because I'll be happy to kind of join for sure. And I may have to stop by to kind of say hello because in my earlier years, I did like a placement there and so forth too. So I've kind of know a little bit, of them. And I've always been amazed of their clientele. And anytime I drive by, even though they probably open around 9 o'clock, I'm not sure if it still happens, but it was happening. Even though they open, let's say at 9 o'clock in the morning, people used to line up like
Yeah.
way before, make that line. And when I look at that, it really tells a story. It tells a story because people feel safe in that space. They go there, they do their own little photocopy, no, they didn't have like structural rules for stuff like that. You can go there, you make a little coffee, and so it was such a welcoming space. I have never seen that happening elsewhere,
No, it was
right?
unique. It
Yeah.
was really special.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness, you get me thinking now because this is good. This is good stuff. And so but I mean you've done your part there too. You've done well because the Friday, a lot of people were looking forward to the Friday, right? Because as you mentioned earlier, not a lot of people had like access to a lot of things. And so they were kind of looking for not only for the movie though, but just to kind of get together with other people
Yeah.
and being among other people and so forth, which is awesome kind of stuff. Amazing. Good
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned his name. I can't remember his name off my head here, but that's kind of silly. What's the name of the fella who started this whole thing? The film thing?
Azam
Azam. Azam. Oh
Fukalade.
my God, yeah,
Yes.
Azam. I will go with Azam for now. Actually, I believe he was one of the at that time, anyways, the Waterloo region Arts Award recipient. Him or either him as an individual or I believe the studio for something that he produced, which was kind of nice as well to have some
Yes.
acknowledgement there.
Yes.
All right, so hang on there. You can draw your breath there. So, my dear fellow listeners and viewers, for those of you who have just tuned in, you're watching or listening to Dr. Narine Dat Show. This evening is very, very special. I have a very special guest here. Dr. Martin took time off his busy schedule to join us. I've known him for several years. He has done so much stuff, in the community. And Martin, I know that this might be of a surprise to you, but honestly, in my younger days, me not knowing what direction I wanted to take with with my own professional career and so forth because in life sometimes you just have to embrace what comes your way, right? And
Yeah.
I've done a variety of different things as well too, but when I was younger and so forth, I used to really listen keenly when you used to speak at several events in the community because you were yeah, you were, special guests, in terms of giving speeches and, sharing your story and so forth. And I used to kind of listen keenly and so forth. So I want you to know that I've learned a lot from you, and this is my way to kind of let you know this. You know
Well,
what I
thank
mean?
you. Thank you so
You know?
much.
And yeah, so that was kind of nice because when you're younger, I mean, you don't know what direction to take, and you look up to people who have kind of been there and kind of have that life experience. And it's so interesting that you were here sharing some of that because I can really connect some of the dots there, which is awesome. Because you have lots of energy and because you are always thinking and you're always on the go. And I say this for a reason because, sometimes if I stop by at the library, I end up seeing you there, you're always active, you're like, I see you, somehow I bump into you. What is it that, or where is it that you see yourself? Let's say 2 years from now. Like, do you have anything happening or any hope you have for you? Because you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned when the cafe, not the cafe, but when the common studio was up and running, you were really looking forward to it because you had somewhere to go, you know what I mean? People, it was an open door policy, so to speak, so people were able to walk in and kind of see what's happening here and whatnot. Yeah, so what is it that you're looking forward to in the next, little while?
Well, I'm interested in a couple of things beyond arts and culture and heritage. One is local journalism. I've already mentioned that. That
Hmm.
just simply, I just thought this is an area where there is great need and where there's almost a vacuum, so it's full of opportunity. So I hope within 2 years, 3 years, to do something of some substance in that field. And I have, like I said, I've been thinking steadily about this for 6 years and more now. Uh, I could, I could write
Hmm.
it up. I mean, I
Hmm.
might give up. When you get older, you realize that you run out of time, you run out of energy. Maybe instead of actually doing what I imagine doing, I'll just write it up and say, look, I imagine doing this. I think I'm running out of steam. Maybe somebody else can. So I'll write it if I can't do it. But that's one field. The other thing is, it was originally through the Common Studio that I met up with Aiko Solomon and Alexander Pavlov, who are part of Peace for All Canada. I don't know if you know Alexander. He's
Yeah, oh yes, yeah.
everywhere.
They're
And
they're working on a special project right now, I believe. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, yes, yes. And they were doing a radio project. I met them at the Common Studio. We did something there. We recorded the testimonies from immigrants, etc. We did some work together. But then they started this radio project, and I said, "Hey, I'll help." And we started interviewing. And they were very ambitious. They were running a 24/7 radio station that they hoped to, but all we did was do one sort of
Hmm.
open-ended podcast of
Hmm.
the three of us chatting
Hmm.
every week. And it was a pleasure to do. And I just got interested somewhere along the line. Partly I helped arrange it. Uh, they have a Center for Peace at Conrad Grebel University College. There's the Kindred Credit Union Center for Peace Advancement, and there they have an incubator program where they take organizations under their wing, and Peace for All Canada became in that incubation program. So I started hanging around Grable and just thinking about peace is something that also, and I'm everything I do is local and regional. So I think a lot about peace, particularly in relation to the culture wars, this horrible polarization, suspicion, people playing on each other's fears and resentments, and also the rifts. I mean, there's some rifts that have formed even within that was my community, arts and heritage in particular. They went in different directions at certain points. And I'm interested in also peace work on the local home front. But also, we're so amazing. I mean, it's really amazing. We were founded, of course, by people who were pacifists. At least the first European settlers, the loyalists, but also the Mennonites. And when they formed the county, Waterloo Region, what's now Waterloo Region, Waterloo County, the first thing they did is bylaw number one was doing that coat of arms, and it's the lion lying down with the lamb, an impossible kind of peace. And it comes from, of course, Isaiah, Old Testament, biblical.
Hmm.
It was a promise of peace to come. I think about those things all the time, and I'd like to do some activities there too. In fact, I'm going to for 4 years in a row. It's Peace Week on the 20. I think International Peace Day is the 21st of September, and
Hmm.
Peace Week goes right to the 30th, which is the uh, uh, the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, etc. And I've given a talk or an event in conjunction with Peace Week for the last 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And this year, I don't have a really extensive network. Maybe no one will come because I actually booked I don't know if you've ever been there. It's the Detweiler Meeting House. It's an old stone Mennonite meeting house that was built in 1850 or something by a certain branch of Mennonites that came up here. And at one point, it was empty for a long time, and some people restored it, and now it's used as a venue for like folk concerts and singing. And I booked that space for on September the 28th,
Oh, nice. Wow.
and I'm going to give here's the here's the peace talk, and here's the Lion and the Lamb, and then I'm contrasting it to it's about the Lion and the Lamb in our symbol, but also I'm a U.S. historian, and the U.S. is currently in the going through celebrating or marking at least the 250th anniversary of its existence. And one of the milestones was the publication of a pamphlet called Common Sense. Thomas Paine. And I'm going to talk about common sense in relation to Peace County and in relation to Canada and the United States today, because it's now, the 51st state and all that kind of business. It's related to those kind of things. And I have some thoughts about how we can distinguish ourselves, what we are. We're different. We're part of the same thing. I think one of the points I'll make is that what happened 250 years ago was just as much the beginning of Canada as we know it, as the United States as we know it. We were the part that did not separate. And of course, all the loyalists and the Mennonites and the Six Nations who fought on the wrong side of the war all came up here, all refugees from war. And we became Upper Canada and eventually part of Canada. So that's what I'm going to talk about on the 28th. And it's a beautiful spot. And it'll be, I also do every week this talk circle from 5 to 7, 5 à 7, every Tuesday. And I chose a different location in downtown Kitchener every week. And this will be a special edition of a talk circle. I'll talk for about half hour, 45 minutes, and throw out some ideas that I hope people won't be too alarmed by. And also then we can have a little talk circle and we can see how people feel about these things. That's what I have planned.
Awesome. Excellent. And how many people fit in that venue? Because I'm looking for venue. I'll connect with you afterward, or if you know of any really good venue. I mean, I know of venue obviously, but if you know of any unique place or really nice place, maybe message me and whatnot. I want to do a celebration in the month of December. Celebrating my doctorate thing.
Oh yeah,
I have not had a chance to really do that. I really wanted to do it. It's been over a year since I've kind of completed it, and I think that it's important for us, as you would know, to kind of step back a little bit and kind of celebrate those things, right? And I
yeah,
never had a chance, and I'm thinking to do it sometime in December because December happens to be my birthday month as well too. So, anyways, we'll
sure.
talk about this afterward.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I've got some thoughts.
Awesome. No, yeah, that's gonna be awesome. So listen, so first of all, thank you so much. So I want to kind of ask you a question here, and I want to remind you as well that this is a safe space, right? And so you only respond as you see fitting, right? And so we try our best to kind of keep it that way. I mean, as you would know, I put my name, to kind of represent different levels of government and so forth, and because I have a passion to want, to make a difference, and I always give it my best shot. It's not always, I don't always get the result, that I hope for, but for me, it's about crossing that finishing line and kind of have my voice heard, so to speak. It gives me a sense of satisfaction. And you will see more of me eventually, right? Because I've learned a lot over the years, but I kind of took a step back and kind of focused on my own personal growth. What I wanted to ask you though is that very recently there was an opening, for a regional council role, which is a very important role and a unique role because it's kind of, um, because the region is growing and all of these types of thing, right? And so every voice, every vote matters, and we need to have, people who can actually, get the work done and whatnot. Where I'm getting at here is that you've put your name forward to be considered and so forth. Despite the fact that you have so much going on and whatnot, you give it a shot. Tell me about that. Tell me why you've decided to do that.
Yes, it was an unusual circumstance. It may never happen again like that because
Mhm,
there's only a little over a year left
mhm,
in the term. There's going to be
mhm,
another municipal election
mhm,
next October. So it would have been for a year and a couple of months. And anybody was allowed to put their name
mhm,
forward. And instead of having to run and going and knocking on doors and putting up signs, uh, you just had to say you were willing to serve, and you were allowed 5-page description of what your
mhm,
qualifications were, and then they gave you 5 minutes to speak to council.
mhm,
And the council was going to decide right there, then and there, on that day. They did that on August the 14th, on a Thursday, and they decided right there which of the candidates. And I think everyone was surprised that 44 people put their name in. So I
yeah.
was one of the 44. I had a different, I wasn't really expecting, I was willing to serve.
Mhm,
And I knew that it would only be for a year because I don't think I would have run again when
mhm,
you had to go and knock on all the doors and all that kind
mhm.
of thing. It's not that I don't want to do the work. It's just that I don't think I have the
It takes
stamina.
effort. It takes effort. Yeah.
I know you need to be strong and young, and I also think I'm very interested in how people my age, my generation, which is the generation from the end of the
Mhm,
Second World War into the 1960s. They're a huge number. We're a huge
mhm,
generation. We've got all sorts of experience and ability and knowledge, and in some cases, wisdom, but also folly. I think we have so many things that we need to take care of over the next few years to get to where we're going to go. When we think about all the challenges before us, I think we can't get there without making taking advantage and making use of all that talent, the talent in my generation. And also, if
mhm,
you're retired or at least of retirement age, you don't have mortgage, you don't have kids in school, you don't have,
mhm,
you get a pension and you get all sorts of breaks. You can work for a lot less than someone who needs to make a living and is building a career. I think there's things that we can do. And I think about that all the time. It was already part of my job when we did those programs for older people working with younger people. So I think about, and that was part of my motivation. I actually put my age as a qualification, but the main reason is that I had read that the region was interested in going back to the Arts Council model after all the things that went down
mhm,
with the Arts Fund and a few other controversies and things like that. They were saying openly and publicly that they were interested in going back to the Arts Council model. And my motivation is to sort of say, hey, I know arts councils. I mean, I
mhm,
ran one for 15 years, for 10 years, and I was part of one for 15, 20 years. I know the field. Also, about 10 years ago, there was a whole group of people that came forward and they started something called Waterloo Region Arts Reboot. And it was meant to be sort of to revive the morale. People were discouraged. They were feeling they were leaving. It was really so they actually put together enough of a program that there's a start there. So I'm basically saying, look, if you're serious about an arts council, put me on council. You don't have to hire any more consultants. There's already most of the work was done. We can start this, and within that year, we'll get to the point. We won't solve all the problems, but we'll be at a point where I think, hey, we're on the right track. That's what I was promising.
mhm,
And I didn't, I kind of didn't expect that they would actually choose me and put me in that position. In fact, I almost didn't want that. It was a relief when I thought maybe they'd say, "Hey, you don't have to be on council to do that. If you really want to do this, come on in. We'll make a plan." But we didn't expect 44 people, so what I had to say kind of got lost in all. I don't think they understood what I was saying, but that was my motivation. And then it was, like I said, a real surprise. 44 people, including some amazingly talented and experienced people. And they were very fortunate that all these people came forward. And we all went there on that Thursday, beginning at 8:30 in the morning, and each of us got our 5 minutes. They didn't ask any questions, but it was actually a kind of encouraging and uplifting experience because there were so many different voices from different backgrounds, different motivations, but everyone there was sincere. They had ideas. They wanted to contribute to their community. And that was the best part of the whole thing, listening to all these people. In the end, it was a peculiar how they actually decided. It took everyone by surprise, and it's water under the bridge now. So I'm not going to, especially since I was one of the candidates, I don't want to sound like a sore loser. But I think that it was the overall impression was positive, and I'd like to actually still do something with it. I actually met with a couple of the other candidates. In fact, tomorrow on my show, I'm putting my radio show together on Sunday right now, and tomorrow I'll be interviewing John Rowe, who used to be the editorial writer. He worked for the Record. He was the very high up in the ranks of the Record over the years. A 40-year career in professional journalism, and he put his name forward. And we have a little discussion, trading notes and impressions about that. Our counts because he put his name in too. But I also met with a couple of others, and I proposed that maybe we call all those 40 people together for one meeting, just to be social and say, "Hey, I'd like to do that."
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I kind of lost you for a couple of seconds, but we are good now, which is great. So thank you so much for that. You know, I was not aware from the beginning as to what plan they have in terms of making that, making a decision, right? Because um sometimes things are unclear. So when I saw, the 44 people, including your staff, I thought that was a good thing. Great candidates and whatnot. But as you mentioned, the decision has already been made, and we have to just kind of, accept it and kind of move on. Election is coming up very shortly, so it's going to be interesting to see who's running and who's not. It does take a lot of work. I can tell you that for sure. It's very energy draining, and sometimes it's not about the effort you put sometimes, and it's not about how much you know as well too, because politics is a very strange thing as well too, right? But I really appreciate you sharing, the fact that you were part of that. I think that's good that you share that here. My question to you though, have you ever was that the first time you've kind of done something as such in
I
terms?
almost did before.
Oh,
Uh,
almost did.
in the 90s, I
Oh.
was going to run for one of the downtown wards for Kitchener Council because I'm a
Mm,
Kitchener. I think region in regional terms because I was a Waterloo Regional Arts Council, but my home is Kitchener, especially downtown Kitchener. And I had a very serious plan to run, but it was one of those situations where there was someone else who had similar views about the downtown. And if we had both run, we would have split the vote. And I probably shouldn't have. I just stepped aside voluntarily and saying,
mm,
"Okay, if you're so eager, go ahead." And that person did win and did a
mhm.
bit of a career and all that stuff. But that's as close as I ever got.
Oh wow.
Now, but my father was, I think he was the first person ever to be elected in Trenton Council that was not of Anglo-Celtic background because he had an accent. We were from Holland. And he had ran for town council, and he served on my city's council for years and years. So I had a model there, and
Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of
uh,
that. So,
yeah.
all right. And so, so that's that. And so, so I appreciate obviously you kind of share that. So I want to talk a little bit more before we wrap things up here. I want to talk a little bit more about your experience teaching in Jamaica. Um, so generally speaking here, what was the experience like, moving, from here in, North America that is, and go to, a place that that you didn't know. I don't
Well,
want to use the word strange per se because people do go for vacation and all of these types of things, right? But what was the experience like for you being in there? But let me be blunt here, like a white man going to country as such and teach there. What was the experience like?
well, for me, it had a major effect on my life. It turned my whole life around. And it has as much to do with what I became later as my PhD or anything else I've ever
Hmm.
done. Just those 3 years in that situation, being part of that that history department there, a wonderful history department with some great people working there. I loved being in Jamaica. Um, we were right in Kingston on the outskirts, Mona campus, it's called. It used to be a plantation, and you could see an aqueduct in front of where I was, and
Hmm.
a it was just an amazing experience. And what I miss the most is people speaking, the culture, but especially the language. They could mix, of course, what the Jamaican language mixed with the people could speak English better than most Canadians can because they were very articulate. But you could mix it up in any combination, right?
Hmm.
And it always was reassuring to me when I had my students, they started talking a little bit of patois in the, and
Hmm.
because it means you're relaxed. I never learned how to do that, and I would be embarrassed trying to. But I really think that is just such an amazing thing. I have a project I'd love to do. There's a woman who wrote it's actually a poem, but it's made a performance poem, and it was made to be performed. It has 3 volumes. It's based around the life of Christ. It was one about uh, Mary and one about Christ himself, but it's not particularly religious. It's a literary form. I would love to do a spoken word performance of that just so people can hear the language because I think it's about as close to English as Shakespearean English. And you would listen, since the story is familiar, you could probably follow it. But what you would be struck by is just the beauty of this language, which was they created, right? With what they remembered from their various parts of Africa where they came from and mixed with English and then developed this wonderful uh, culture. And then the rest of the culture too. I came with no expect, it was totally
Hmm.
unexpected. It was a matter of weeks between the time when he called and I was actually there. And it was I think if I had 1 year and I came back, I would think that I understood something about how Jamaican culture and society operated. But things that looked familiar were not as close to what you imagine. So
Hmm.
I developed more respect for the complexity and how it all worked, the families, the extended family, and how things just worked. That the longer I stayed there, the less I was confident that I could understand, and the more I realized that how special and how different it actually was. But there, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Now, mind you, Jamaica is a difficult place.
Mhm.
It was a difficult time. There were still remnants of the left and the right and the two parties, and you could sometimes hear gunfire off in the distance, and there was a lot of crime and poverty like you couldn't even imagine. Like we didn't even, it was just part of uh, those kind of things I was not prepared for, and you saw it. But on the whole, though, I just respect the culture and the society, and um, I'll always be grateful that I had that privilege, that chance to be there for those 3 years. I don't know
Awesome.
what would have happened if I'd gotten the job. I think it's difficult for an expat to come to. You're never totally part of the society, right? And you're always aware of that, and I respect that. That's okay. But and it would have been difficult, particularly this was the days before the internet and all those things. It would have been difficult to do academic work. I don't know if I ever would have been able to finish my PhD if I'd stayed there. Plus, you get paid in currency that's not exchangeable. I had to go every morning to the bank, and then you would take your, because I got paid in Jamaican dollars, you would
Mhm.
get your daily allotment of hard currency, and you'd get maybe $30 or 40 or 50 each day. And I had to do that day after day. So I'd have enough to live on during the summer when I had to go to the US and do research and all of that. It was really, um, that's another thing, to live in a
Mhm.
country where the dollar is not exchangeable. I
Yeah.
made it was very strange. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, even though it was, challenging in its own way, it looks like you really, you really enjoy your journey there, which is great. How about the food? Did you enjoy the food there at all? Did you kind of had like a specific menu that you look forward to at all?
I love the food, and the street food, the jerk, and especially when there's places where it's really originally where the original jerk isn't chicken. Now it's mostly chicken, but
Hmm.
originally it was pork. And there's a place up in the north where it goes back to the days of the Buccaneers.
Hmm.
And the Buccaneers, of course, it means bacon, right? They lived on
Hmm.
pigs. That's the one I remember the most. But also just simply the diet, the rice and peas, Jamaican patties. Even strangely enough, I'm not a big soft drink person, but Jamaican Pepsi Cola is the best possibly imagine. There's something about it's fresh. Coke is terrible, but and I even missed the Jamaican version of an American soft drink, which is different than ours. And the fruit,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
the mangoes. There's a mango tree right in front of my house. Amazing.
Definitely the experience, the experience is what matters. And so obviously, you have the history background, which means that you've done a lot of reading and so forth. So I think um, it is fair for me to say that you are aware of the Sour with Love book that's out, The Sour with Love. Are you aware of that story at all? The Sour with Love.
To Serve with
It
Love. I
was.
mean the film with
Yeah, and there's a book as well too. Yes,
okay, about the teacher
yeah, the teacher,
in
yeah.
the
In
UK,
the
right?
UK,
Yes,
there you go. Yes, yes.
with Sidney Poitier.
You got it. Guyanese born went there. I think it's a unique story in a sense, that he wasn't treated, well at the very, first part of things, but at the end of it all, right? The student they came together and gave him a note that says to serve with love, and I think that's how, if I'm not mistaken here, I think that's how this whole book and then the movie and thing came along, kind of thing. Yeah. So that was kind of nice. Yeah. I just thought to add that because you've had
You're right.
you've had the reverse experience, right?
I didn't get any To Serve with Love kind of, but I
But
do
but
want
yeah, go
one
ahead.
towards at one point, one of my students, because religion is different, and I remember one of my students afterwards came up to me and said, uh, "Professor de Groot, are you a Christian?" And I said, well, I was brought up Christian. I'm not a practitioner, but, and then they said, well, you're so kind. You're so and I thought that was sort of my discernment. That they were, at least they appreciated what I could do. And I did, uh, I did love them very much. They were just wonderful, all the students.
That's awesome. Good stuff. Did you end up do any teaching over here? Like at
Yes,
Laurie or anything with
I
that
taught at
side?
Laurier, U of W, McMaster, Brock.
Oh, really?
I've done them all. For a while, I
Oh,
was a traveling U.S. History Roadshow. You'd get a sessional appointment
oh,
and
wow.
driving
Yeah.
to St. Catharines and back every day. I did that for a while before the jobs started happening, and I was
Hmm.
had to make ends meet just doing bits and pieces, right?
Oh, wow. Hmm.
And I, for many years, did it here in at U of W. I was just a fill-in. Um, every other year for a while. So I did a lot of it. And sometimes you'd get an assignment that be challenging, like Atlantic World was a challenge. You had to learn it very quickly. But I remember doing a course, for instance, on the town in U.S. history that a person who specialized in that was on leave for, and I was hired at McMaster to teach that. And you had to then again just dive into it in order to be able to teach.
Hmm.
And I really appreciated that. Also, the U.S. at war. Like I'm a child of the 60s. Like we didn't do war. But
Hmm.
I said, now I had to teach this. But I got a lot out of having to immerse myself in these very special and important topics and stay one step ahead of my students.
Awesome. And how did you find jobs? Like, did you have to kind of apply or you kind of use your networking to find work?
Yeah, I think the jobs were posted and there's
Newspaper and
certain
things like that.
circles,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Mm.
Or sometimes just word of mouth, like
More and more.
the Jamaican came because Michael Creighton, they asked him, is there anybody that you know? And so I ended up that way.
Yeah. All right. So listen, you've really done well to kind of capture things so nicely, and that's because of your unique skills. I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of share any last minute thing you'd like to share. Do know that a person like you, because you have so much to offer, this is just the beginning. We'll have you back on, from time to time based on what's happening and whatnot. So keep that in mind. I'm giving the opportunity to kind of share, any last minute thing you'd like to share with us. Before we wrap it up, but I want you to know I'm very grateful for, your time here. It was definitely a pleasure.
A pleasure for me too. I think if anybody's interested in getting involved in any
Mm,
of the things I've mentioned here, whether
mm,
it's
mm,
local peacemaking or radio or local journalism, I want people to work with. I'm tired of working all by myself. But
mm,
in terms of all by myself, I will plug my talk on the
mhm,
28th one more time. It's
mm,
actually you, you're Dr. Narine
mm,
Dat, and I am Dr.
mm,
Marinus de Groot. Marinus was my original name.
mhm,
And on the front of this postcard, I hardly ever use the title doctor, but
mhm.
in this case, it applies because I'm applying
Yeah.
some of what I learned in my doctorate. And but if I'm doing a radio show, then it's not you are because you studied the kind of things that you
Mhm,
cover
mhm,
in your program. So it is the
mm.
Dr. Narayan show. But um, yes, please do come Sunday afternoon. It'll be a pleasant drive out to Roseville. Look it up on any map. It's just being in this space. It was, of course, an old church, and it has this wonderful echoey kind of presence. Um, um, and being able to speak there and have a discussion there should be a pleasure.
Send that flyer to me, right? Send that flyer to me. I'm gonna
I will
see.
do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Please do that. I think what you're doing there is great because it is the peace week coming up, and a lot of people are trying to kind of keep it alive, like the why they do their thing throughout the country, and they do like some awards presentation and things like that. So send that to me, and I'll kind of to kind of share the word as well. I think that's
Thank
important.
you.
I've changed your name and I add the doctor there too. I'm not sure if you realize that or not.
That's fine.
Because I have the privilege to do it on my end, so I kind of did that because I think that for me kind of important. And I have to share this one story quickly before you go. Speaking of doctorate and doctor and so forth. So in my younger days, when I was doing my undergraduate degree and so forth, I kind of did my paper, and I did not put all the credential of the professor at that time on the cover page. I put his name and whatnot. So I didn't put his doctorate. I didn't address him that way. And then he sent me back right away, sent me back the paper right away. And he told me, look, I work hard for this. I want to see it there. And then, but I was young. I didn't kind of thing. And I guess he took it personal because
Yeah.
on one hand, I'm saying like, I'm a student. I'm learning. He didn't give me the chance to kind of, think. He just sent back the paper and say, fix it. And so I think it. And so I think, so I fix it, right? So you see, I'm learning, right? And I fix yours as well, Jim. All right. So
And
listen,
then we
so,
might as well make it Marinus, my birth name. It was the name that I was given when I was born. Martin was assigned, but by my own people. They started their own school,
mm,
a Christian school, and on day one, every single person in school from grade 1 to grade 8, if they had a Dutch sounding name, they were assigned an Anglophone one.
oh wow, yeah. Yeah, and so and I know we are wrapping it up here now, but I want to share with folks who are watching and listening here that last year we presented our Activision Awards to Dr. Martin because of the work he has done, over the years as it relates to the arts in so many different ways, and it was very well deserving. We usually give out one lifetime achievement award, and it went to you, Dr. Martin. So do know that we did it because of your hard work, and hope that you really appreciate that.
I definitely appreciate it. It was a real, real honor.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. So, my dear fellow listeners and viewers, as we are officially approaching the end of our program, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you for tuning into the Dr. Narine Dat Show on behalf of myself and my guest, Dr. Martin. Both of us would like to join together and wish you a great today and even a better tomorrow. We'll see you again soon.